Okay, we're going to do the 30, 60, 90 proof using an equilateral triangle. So it says, given WXY is an equilateral triangle and that segment XZ bisects angle WXY. So equilateral triangle, well that tells us that we have three congruent sides and three 60-degree angles. We know this, okay? So 60, 60, 60, congruent, congruent, congruent. We know this from that first statement. Second, segment XZ bisects angle WXY, meaning that this is two 30-degree angles. All right. Also, let's just say that this is given because it's actually a theorem, but we're not going to worry too much about it. If these are congruent, then we have angle-angle similarity between these triangles. It becomes angle-side angle congruence. Therefore, this is also congruent. Therefore, this is the same as this. I'm just going to pretend that this is given, that this has to be exactly half of this. So, in other words, zy is exactly wy divided by 2. Okay, we know this. What we also know by using the Triangle Sum Theorem is that if this is 30 and this is 60, this has to be 90 because triangles always add up to 180. What we also know is that if wy is congruent to xy, then I can rewrite this as wy over 2. Instead, we will call it xy over 2 because we know that if these are congruent, then I can substitute this value. In other words, this side is half as long as this side in a 30, 60, 90 triangle. A is half of C. That's interesting because what we need to prove is C equals 2A. That's done. And we need to prove that B equals A squared of 3. Well, if we plug these numbers into the Pythagorean theorem, we will get that this does indeed equal zy times the square root of 3. In this proof, we're not going to bother so much with the math of it as just to understand where that proof comes from. Okay, so our first given is that WXY is an equilateral triangle. And we know that this is given. Our second given is that XZ bisects angle WXY. How do we know this? It is given. And these give us a lot of information. For instance, in an equilateral triangle, all three sides are congruent. Therefore, segment XW is congruent to segment WY is congruent to segment YX. That's the definition of an equilateral triangle. We also know that all three of these angles are going to be 60. So measure of angle XWY, measure of angle WYX, and measure of angle YXW all equal 60 degrees. We know this because it's true in all equilateral triangles. That's the definition of equilateral triangles. All right, now that we've got all of this, we need to start talking about this being a 30-degree angle, this being a 90-degree angle, and all this sort of thing. So we know this is 30 because XZ bisects angle WXY. So measure of angle ZXY equals 30 degrees. We know this because segment XZ bisects, which means cuts in half, bisects angle WXY, angle WXY. All right, so now we got the 30. We can go ahead with the 90 by using the Triangle Sum Theorem. So we can say measure of angle XZY, XZY equals 90. We know this because if you have 30 and 60, the third one has to be 90 by the Triangle Sum Theorem. So we say Triangle Sum Theorem. Okay, now remember, by the fact that this bisects, we know that this is going to be WY over 2. So we can say ZY equals WY divided by 2. We know this because segment XZ bisects the angle. So segment XZ bisects angle WXY. WXY. It basically bisects segment WY. Alright, we know that WY up here is congruent to XY. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out WY and replace it with YX. So that ZY, this segment right here, is equal to YX over 2. What we did is we substituted a congruent value. Alright, so we know basically that C equals 2A. We also know that we have a 90-degree angle, so we can do the Pythagorean Theorem to find ZY. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that ZY squared plus ZX squared equals XY squared. We know this is true by the Pythagorean Theorem. And then if we solve it, we end up with XZ equal to ZY times the square root of 3. Anytime we solve, we use PEMDAS to back it up. So we have everything we need to know. It's a 30, 60, 90 triangle. C equals 2A, B equals A squared of 3. We're done. We nailed it. Study, 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 study. See you in class. Good job.